Hello.
Coate, Andrew J. Oh my God, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Oh my
Let me
gosh,
get my work computer stuff out of the way here.
you got like
So
the coolest environment there.
when you're stuck in a room for 5 years, you gotta at least spruce it up a little bit, right?
Yes. All right, you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Hello, my faithful followers and friends. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ain't Gonna Be No Stupid. I am here with not a former student, but someone that I know from the swim team at the school I teach. And let me tell you, you're going to be in for a treat today. I talked to your coach this week and just mentioned how I'm going to talk to Andrew J. Coate this week. And she said, oh my gosh, that was the best swim team I've ever coached. And it was just the most effortless swim team. And you were such a leader. I remember walking through the halls and what a leader you were. You used to make Coate films and all the creativity that came from that. So if you could maybe fill in some of the blanks that I just had here, because I did not have you as a student, correct? It was just on the swim team when I was coaching.
No, that's right. You're coaching swim team, and I was on the team. But I also I think we got to know each other best because my senior year, when I had a lot of senioritis, I had tried to find ways to skip classroom. So I was your copy aide.
Oh,
So go into the
yes.
copy room and doing that. So that
I
so
remember
that
now. I was like, wait a minute. I knew
yeah,
you better than just that. I'm like, how do I know Andrew better than that?
that's right.
Copy aid. That's when we used to have copiers that worked. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. I think I was like, you were only supposed to do it one period. I think I had three different teachers that I conned into letting me be their copy aide. So I had like three periods of just
Trust
going to
me.
the copy room. Yeah.
No, trust me. You don't need to con us to help us make copies. That's
There you
definitely
go.
not the case. No, for sure. But no, let's start with, if we can. Well, first of all, the title is Ain't Gonna Avoid Tough Things. And I was inspired by that title because of this article I read that you wrote on Medium. You have 733 followers, really impressed. And I was like, wow, this article is amazing. One of the things I did want to do, I want to get into the innocent story first. We always start with something that seemed kind of stupid or innocent at the time. If you have a story here, I might be able to elaborate on it with a story of a similar topic.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's funny to be remembered as the best and easiest swim team because I think we were also a bunch of jokers. But I think what comes to mind about innocence, and I think this still exists in my life today, a lot of energy for pranks and for just mischief and things like that. But for some reason, when I was a freshman in high school, I thought it was funny to throw my shoe at people. I think it had something to do with in Austin Powers, there was like a villain that threw his shoe, and it was just ridiculous. And so then, as junior high or freshman in high school humor goes, I would do that, and so I would just take off my shoe and just throw it at people in gym class or whatever. So if you're watching and you're a fellow former Oakland student, you got hit in the head with a shoe in the hall, it was probably me, and I apologize.
Oh man, the crime that existed back then. Speaking of which, I was at Chicago Ridge Mall around that time, just moved to the area, and there was a kid walking through the shoe department, and I was looking at shoes, and I literally whacked him on the side of his shoulder because he was being loud. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't realize, oh, there's a parent right there. Oh no, what did I just do? I probably taught that kid in class later in life. You know what I mean? So when you mentioned you had a shoe store, I was like, oh, I definitely have one that goes along with that.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought that was funny, but yeah, for like
Oh
a
yeah.
full year, I would just throw my shoe in the middle of the hall. I don't know.
Well, you have to be like, you're probably a similar shtick, or you probably have a similar MO, don't you? Little
Well,
prankster or
yeah, I mean, definitely to this day, I think my friends are, I don't know, I think they're masochists or something that they want to continue to hang out with me because I just am continually playing pranks or making fun of them or something.
But you know what your coach Petch did say, that you always embraced everyone. I know that's one of the reasons she loved coaching you. Everybody who joined the team, you weren't a prankster to bully in that tone.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
embrace people at the same time, which I think is an interesting combo.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good. It's all good natured, and I think that works, like me being, mean to my friends because they know I actually care about them. And I'm also pretty self-deprecating, and I'm sure you'll
Yes.
find in our conversation here. So,
Yes.
yeah, but I don't know. I think just the way I was raised, or as I embraced like the cool part of, I didn't actually really enjoy going to school, but the cool part about being there and being forced to go there is the people and meeting different people and different backgrounds. So I don't know. I never wanted to be like a thing. So I was
Hmm.
on the swim team, but not a swimmer. I did drama, but wasn't, a drama kid. Was in band, but not a, band kid or whatever. So I just tried to be like whatever's interesting to me and whoever's interesting to me, hang out with or learn about. And I think that persists to this day for sure.
That is amazing because you just said that, because I was just talking to a teacher friend of mine too. We love our time with the kids. That's the best part of teaching. And if it wasn't for that, it would be a rough gig. It would be something I'd be like, peace out, right? Because of all the other things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you just said that, because that's really what keeps me going in that profession.
Cool.
So our stupid situationship, it's just anything that you feel like maybe.
Yeah, I guess it relates to Mischief. So after high school, my early 20s, I spent most of the time involved in the music industry in one form or another, touring, working at venues, different things like that. And through that, I interacted in Chicago a few times with Billy Corgan. Billy Corgan is the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins, which was a band I idolized when I was much younger. So you can imagine excitement, be sitting backstage at the Metro, famous Chicago venue that like made the Smashing Pumpkins, and there he is, and he's hanging out with us. Summarize the story. I thought he was a jerk, and we interacted a few other times, and it devolved into I got invited to one of his poetry readings, and I got there, and it wasn't his poetry reading. It was like an open mic that Billy Corgan had just decided to go to. And so he started reading this long poem. And I was in the back of the room, and just for whatever reason, I started booing him. And this is a small room. And so I was just booing him in this poetry reading, and things devolved from there. So now Billy Corgan, and I are nemesis. He probably has no idea who I am anymore, or probably never did. But for me, it's to the point where I'm kind of obsessed at, hating him, to the point where it was on my LinkedIn bio for a while, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so Billy, I can't quit you. You annoy the crap out of me, but I love your music.
Oh, thank you for censoring yourself there for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you still love his music, and that's why it's a stupid situationship, because you hate him at the
Yeah.
same time. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate him, but I love like everything he made before 1997, basically. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So then that kind of made me think about what you said about your 20s. Weren't you kind of like living in shoddy situations and your underemployment? And what happened with that?
Yeah, I mean, so I left Oakland to go to the University of Colorado, and aforementioned, wasn't super big fan of school. I think, without getting too much on a soapbox, when you're 18 years old or 17 years old, and there's a lot of pressure to know what you want to do with your life. If you're anything like me, you didn't, and kind of still don't.
Hmm.
And so, I kind of wandered around. It was awesome to be in Colorado. I ended up living out there again and love it, but school wise, it just wasn't really productive. And so I found myself finding, working all these different jobs and just trying to be able to live and survive out there. Long story short, come back to Chicago, and that really persisted. I didn't really have a clear path of like, go here, get this degree, get this job kind of thing. And so I found myself bouncing around a little bit, doing anything I could to scrape money together. Still all related to like music industry stuff, but that's a really tough industry to make any money. So
Hmm.
at one point, I was a band manager. You make 12% of whatever they make, and if they make nothing, you're making 12% of nothing. So yeah, so it was just a bit of and then with that comes your self-doubt and all that kind of stuff, to be like, I'm not like I'm better than this, but just like, is
Hmm.
this what my life is supposed to be, where I can't pay rent and I can't, I'm basically ordering two hot dogs and one is going to be breakfast in the morning, that kind of stuff.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is perfect segue into the title. ain't gonna avoid tough things. And the reason I learned about you because of something with the algorithm, I found you again through some other podcast, right? And then I saw that
Yeah.
you had COVID and that you're one that got extreme symptoms and are still suffering. If I could read those details, and then we'll get into the bulk of the program. But
Sure.
you're still experiencing brain fog, memory loss, difficulty forming sentences, blackouts, constant tinnitus, which is a ringing in the ears. This one I don't know how to say. Eye shakes.
Yeah,
Invol-
yeah, astigmatism, yeah.
oh,
Is that right?
yeah, involuntary twitching, shaking, similar to Parkinson's, aches everywhere, easily winded, low energy, and you're constantly going to the doctor. And
Yeah,
you got COVID 8 months ago?
December 12th.
Wow.
Yeah.
So currently your health situation is you've been vaccinated since, but has that
Yeah,
helped the symptoms at all?
it has. So that was the long list of symptoms. Not, I mean, I'm still experiencing most of those, but there was also like the first few months of this year, couldn't breathe at all, and would have my heart rate just spiking and all sorts of things. And I'm a runner, and so in fact the morning that we ended up testing positive, I had run 15 miles, and so like I'm just a person who's lately kept care of myself, and so that just kind of really destroyed me for the first part of the year. And, I think it's such a contractible disease or virus, and it made its way. I think for me, I have been a person of like I don't even get colds. Like I've been pretty healthy other than like migraines or something in my life. And then to be at a point where 8 or 9 months later, I'm still having all of these different things. I think maybe this transitions into our next part. It's good and it's bad and good. It's bad because it's been very disruptive in my life, but it's good because maybe there's something else going on, and this just kind of shook it up, and now
Yeah.
there's a path to recovery or to treatment or those kind of things. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. And I think of the verse, First James 2-3, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So whenever I've gone through struggles, I've actually just lost my dog. So that's my recent struggle. And then
Sorry to hear that.
I've had some health issues as well. And boy, it just makes you, and I want to quote you in the article that you said, it's just with every setback, every misstep, trial and tribulation, something magical happened. I grew. I got smarter, savvier, more skilled, and more refined. Ain't that the truth when you go through stuff, right?
Yeah. I don't want to be overly, I don't say optimistic, but like overly like Instagram story about it, where like, hey, just stick in there, kids. But like, I do think that there's like a message to what you're quoting there, where it's acknowledging that this sucks and this is tough and this is hard, but knowing that if you let it, you're going to go through, you're going to learn something, you're going to get better at something, you're going to get more refined, or at the very least, if you experience anything similar in the future, you'll have understood what that was and kind of
I
know how
like
to
that.
approach it,
I like that. Now, don't heckle me when I read this long verse, first Proverbs
No.
20:33-33. It's personified, it's wisdom personified, and it's my favorite proverb in the whole Bible. So I've got to read it. And I want to connect it to how, you know, like mental health as well. And we want to
Mm-hmm.
talk more about that. So let me read this.
Yep.
Wisdom praises are sung in the streets and celebrated far and wide. Yet wisdom's song is not always heard in the halls of higher learning. But in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, its lyrics can always be heard above the din of the crowd. You will hear wisdom's warning as she preaches courageously to those who stop to listen. Foolish ones, how much longer will you cling to your deception? How much longer will you mock wisdom, you cynical scorners who fight the facts? Come back to your senses and be restored to reality. Don't even think about refusing my rebuke. Don't you know that I'm ready to pour out my spirit of wisdom upon you and bring to you the revelation of my words that will make your heart wise? I've called to you over and over. Still, you refuse to come to me. I've pleaded with you again and again, yet you've turned a deaf ear to my voice. Because you have laughed at my counsel and have insisted on continuing in your stubbornness, I will laugh when calamity comes and turn away from you at the time of your disaster. Make a joke of my advice, will you? Then I'll make a joke out of you. With the storm clouds of terror gather over my head, when dread and distress consume you and your catastrophe comes like a hurricane, you will cry out to me, but I won't answer. Then I will be too late to expect my help. When desperation drives you to search for me, I will be nowhere to be found because you have turned up your nose at me and closed your eyes to the facts and refused to worship me in awe. Because you scoffed at my wise counsel and laughed at my correction, now you will eat the bitter fruit of your own ways. You've made your own bed, now lie in it. So how do you like that? Like an idiot, you turned away from me and chose destruction instead. Your self-satisfied smugness will kill you, but the one who always listens to me will live undisturbed in heavenly peace, free from fear, confident and courageous. That one will rest unafraid and sheltered from the storms of life. I know that was a mouthful. That was a mouthful, but I read it as an example to remind ourselves that if we don't embrace the struggle, if we don't embrace what we're going through, we're not going to get the wisdom that comes of it, which I think is the entire theme of this program. We do tough things. And as a result, we grow, we get stronger, we get better, not bitter, right? That's the whole cliche phrase, which again, cliche phrases and, those, like you said, those phrases, they don't help anybody, right? Just suck it up or just be stronger and all that. It's all about, if you're going through it, don't give up and don't succumb to the lesson that's supposed to be in the midst of it. Correct?
Yeah, I think about it as, it's like through this time and even in past struggles and eras of my life, I didn't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I'm just so physically exhausted, but also just like overwhelmed by the state of this. I don't like working from home, the pandemic, all these things, right? But there's a point where you just have to do that. You just have to get out of bed, right? And to take those steps. And they're not going to be perfect steps. They're not going to be, you're still going to have, maybe a difficult day or hour or minutes or whatever. But I think it's that like call to action a little bit of like acknowledging like this is rough, this is hard, but then actually do like, but you have to live life, you have to like get out of bed there. And I think I kind of think about it that way, right? I'm not perfect at it, right? I'm not saying like I run face first into challenges and conquer them or anything like that. I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's like run face first in challenges and they, that wall hits me really hard. And then I have to figure out, okay, what's a different approach now?
That's good. Yeah. And it's similar to like you were saying with pandemic, people often hated that we had to slow down and we couldn't see people. For me, I was like, it gave me a second wind. It was like, I didn't get COVID, so I don't want to disrespect anyone who did, but I felt like I could finally breathe, ironically, in a situation where it was a disease that was taking our breath away, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting piece. But it also said when that article you gave me, I'll put the article in the notes.
Okay.
But how do you find steadiness with the world that spins around you? How do you personally, practical things, how do you slow things down?
How do I? So I believe a lot in like a focus on your energy, right? You only have a finite amount every day. And I personally have less than that these days. So I think about it through like, you only have like this finite amount, as I said. So where do you want to spend that, and where do you want to focus your time? And so to me, that manifests itself in a little bit of limiting my inputs as well, because think about it. There's an author I really admire named Ryan Holiday, and he tends to tweet this out a lot in the morning, which is funny because it hits me in the perfect place. Where if you're spending your morning, your first waking moments on Twitter or reading the news or things like that, the first things that you're getting for your day someone else's thoughts and someone else's opinions and someone else's guidance, right?
Mhm.
Versus spending some time reflecting on, what
Yes.
do I need for myself? And so I think that I try my best to at least start the days with more of what do I need to think about and what am I dwelling on and that kind of stuff. But kind of throughout the day, that focus on energy is really what it comes back to, right? Is this
Yeah.
activity draining me
Right.
more than it's giving me?
I
And
agree.
so, that's tuning out media, that's tuning out sorry boss, like certain things at work,
Yes.
prioritizing is what they say in the corporate world, right? And doing that a lot. And so for me, that's been really the practice and the exercise in the last few years is really kind of looking through things as like, do I need to do this, or do I need to consume this, or do I need to have this conversation, or like, do I need to focus on this? Like, is this really worth all the time and attention and energy and emotion I'm giving it or not? And then where it's not, finding ways to either cut it out completely or just have less of that. So
So is that the same way you would clarify your thinking then?
I think it's like in, being intentional is really what it all comes down to, right? Like I believe a lot in design and intention there, and
Mm-hmm.
so it really comes down to saying like, instead of just waking up and letting the day happen to you, there's a bit of that we can't control. The day does just happen. That's how time works, right? But
Yes.
but within that, being intentional, we have a lot more control over our days and our times and our energies than I think most of us give ourselves credit for.
I really like that. I know my counselor told me just turn on do not disturb when you get home at night on your phone. I'm like, what? I never even thought of
Yeah,
that. And that's a
yeah,
great way. So I'm not available between these hours,
yeah.
guys. Sorry, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't have any notifications on my
yeah,
phone at
yeah,
all. And like those
yes,
little red dots don't allow those. But like I mean, like there would be times where, I'll get a text from a friend and it's not that I'm avoiding them, but I won't get back to them for a few days because, as I'm living, I'm not responding to pings and text messages and emails. I'm responding to like, what do I have the energy for now that's most important that I can commit that to?
ooh, that's good because I know with ADHD I have, and if I don't respond, I'll forget. And so I have a
Yep.
tendency to be kind of frenetical with my responses. And email, same thing. So it's something I maybe need to work on that. Thank you for that.
I struggle with that too, by the way. Like it's not,
Yeah,
I'm not, like when I sit here, I don't sit here as an expert. I sit here as
yeah,
like, these are the things that I try, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I love that. How do you then center your soul?
It's a good question these days, isn't it? um, from, I think this is an ongoing question, just to be completely honest. I've spent a lot of my life since you and I would have interacted last, like going, like on the go. What is the next thing? What is the next thing? So for me, this pandemic really was the moment of everything for me also shut down abruptly, and it gave me kind of a moment of reckoning about my routines, the things I was thinking, my emotions, my thoughts, the medical issues with COVID, all of these different things. It forced me to kind of do a bit of soul searching to say, what am I about and what do I care about? I do though believe that how that manifests itself for me is where I spend my time and energy, and like who I spend my time and energy with. And so that looks like, I care very much about mental health and reducing the stigma of talking
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Specifically within the industry that I used to work in, the music industry. So I'm now on the advisory board of an organization called the Sims Foundation, which
Mm.
provides specific mental health and substance abuse care for the music industry, for entertainment industry. So things like that to me are saying I have, maybe not all the energy in the world, but I have some time and some skill and something to offer the world
Mm.
to this community. And so that's what I do where I can.
Love that.
Um, and so that's, I think, maybe an example of, but it's also probably pretty ongoing. A lot of soul searching these days, right?
Yeah, yeah. When you say it was that mental health is not linear in your notes,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, you mentioned ADHD, things like that things like depression, things like anxiety, these things don't manifest themselves like, oh, I'm good and I'll just continue to get better
Yeah.
if you're working on it, or you're paying attention to it, right? And I think my mental health and my physical health have gone through this path since December, where it's not only like not linear day to day, where today's better than yesterday, like hour to hour, minute to minute, it fluctuates. So you can
Mm-hmm.
have, to put it in like my day to day terms, I can have a call with some coworkers where I'm feeling on it and I know what I'm trying to work on and I'm engaged in the conversation, and then that call can end and the next call can be a disaster because I'm forgetting what I was talking about, or like I've had one of these blackouts that I get in the middle of a meeting where I'm staring at you, like I'm staring at you, Amy, and like don't know what is happening. And so things like that can happen minute to minute. And I feel like that's a very specific example, but on a broader scale, like you can feel terrible and you can feel great. And those are all part of the experience. It's not you feel terrible, you get help, and now you continue to feel better. It just doesn't work that way. And so I think
Exactly.
it's acknowledging that, and that's part of like reducing the stigma. Is it's like it's not like you backslide, like you're just in this moment, not where you were in the moment before.
Right. And you don't want to put judgment on your feelings either.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You just have the way you've been talking this whole time. I'm reading a book called Misdiagnosis about geniuses that are been labeled learning disabled or have things like ADHD or whatever. And you sound like a classic example of somebody who was a genius. Have you ever been diagnosed with that label? Because tend to be not good in school, not liking school, the way you kind of wandering through. And even before COVID, did you not have the similar kind of symptoms of you go in, you fix a problem, you see problems and you have solutions for them, and then you have very much signs of genius in you. I think a lot of us have it. We have a lot of genius in us that we don't really know because of the way the schools measured us. They didn't measure our genius, therefore we walk around feeling like we're not good enough, or we're not, we have some sort of disabled. There's a fact that I have ADHD, but I just think that's just a sign of genius. And I just, based on what my research is, I still am able to manage it well, but I don't know.
You're making me blush here. I think I definitely know a few friends that I'm going to send this to, just that part. I'm just going to edit it down to that part specifically.
I'm going to put the book in the notes for sure. It's a great
Okay.
book.
Okay. So, uh, I mean, I think the only time I've been called a genius in my life, it's been sarcastically, but I was in gifted programs when I was a kid, gifted, when you're like third grade or
There you
younger than
go.
that, and
There you
like,
go.
and things like that. And my wife, is a former school teacher as well. I don't think she would label me a genius, but she does have the vocabulary to understand the like mischief and the anxiety throughout like a classroom setting. Like, I don't know, she says maybe I was just bored or something like that.
Which is a
Yeah, I don't
sign of
know.
genius.
It's like, okay, I'll take that as a compliment, but I've always just thought about it as like, part of this like larger, I just haven't, I don't find things that interest me like so deeply for so long, right? And so I think that has led to like a pretty frantic life overall. Like if I think back through the 36 years of my life, they are filled with motion and activity, particularly as soon as I got to high school. I think, I was in all these clubs and all this kind of stuff to fight boredom,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know what I want. And I think I really still don't. But
Yeah, that's
that's
a
just
sign.
like,
That's a
yeah.
total, you're classic genius. I'm telling you.
All
Let's put
right.
that
You
on the
heard it. You
record.
heard it here, everyone. All of my friends that I'm now sending this to. Yeah.
All right. I did also think of this topic when I was watching this trailer for Cry Macho. I think it's coming out in September with Clint Eastwood. Let me write this.
Okay.
You used to be strong macho, this little kid says to him. He said, this macho thing is overrated. People trying to be macho to show they got grit. That's about all they end up with.
Hmm.
So I think about even just the way you've been kind of wandering through life, as you say, or just sort of like here, there, everywhere. But never walking around like you're this tough guy, right? Because I did another episode on the, ain't gonna be no toxic male. And I don't think you come off as a toxic male, somebody who's like, oh yeah, I got it all together. Because I think that's where you are just lying to yourself and lying to the world, and to act like we have it all together and just suck it up and toughen up. That is like one of the biggest lies that we could tell people. Surrender is what I would say. Surrender to the moment, surrender to the struggle, and always ask, what am I supposed to learn from this? Right?
Mhm.
Always ask that.
Yeah, toughness is an interesting one. I yeah, I don't think I've ever fit the profile of like, macho by any means. I've always kind of had this build, real
Mm-hmm.
like even when I was in swimming and had muscles or whatever, I wasn't macho.
But
But
you were
I
an
but
amazing swimmer, if I remember. You did.
I was pretty good.
Yes, yes.
But I think like, the way I grew up and the environment that I grew up in as the age I am, there is this like grin and bear it. I'm from the South Side of Chicago. I'm Irish, Polish, and German in heritage. Like my dad was a police officer. Like there are contributing factors to this idea of like tough it out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying my dad put that on me, but like I think like that was how my generation was kind of raised, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you
Mine
fall
too.
down, just stand up and spit dirt on it, and that's fine.
That's
And
what we
so,
all,
and I
yeah.
think I still embrace some of that a little bit. So I
Mm-hmm.
struggle with that. Like, there is like I'm a runner, and it's like come on, run through the pain, like that kind of thing. But there are limits to that, and there are limits to when you start to damage yourself. On a mental toughness part, this is where I think it's actually like asking for help and saying you don't know the answers and
Mm-hmm.
saying you are going to figure this out. Let me come back to you, boss, on this. I don't understand. So
It's
let me
great.
like go figure this out. Like that is to me tough.
That's
That's
perfect.
not what we traditionally think of tough, which is like take whatever I can and grin and bear it.
Right.
Because if you're doing that, if you're grinning and bearing it, you're still bearing it. Like it's not getting any better.
I
It's not
agree.
changing for you. So I think that has been, and by the way, this has been an evolution for me. Like this has been something that's evolving over my life, and like thinking about things like mental health and depression and some of these things. I had to think back in my timeline and realize the errors of like my younger ways, which are just like trying to just get through it as
Hmm.
opposed to get help. And
Well, I
so I
love,
think that, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I
No, no.
love you mentioned running. And I think metaphorically, is it true that runners don't like the first mile?
Oh yeah, I hate it. Like I want to stop every time I get out, and then like mile 3, I'm like, why did I? This is the best.
Perfect metaphor for anyone who really wants to give up. I mean, I'm not a runner and I don't think I'll ever feel what you feel with running. But in terms of other things in life, going through tough stuff, let's just be inspired here by that metaphor, because yeah, did you hear that? You heard it from a runner. He wants to give up the first mile. We see runners are like, oh, I wish I could be like that, but you don't realize they're hating the first mile. So just
Yeah,
remember that.
like I swear at myself through like most of running, and then you finish, and you're like, oh, it's great. I'll do that tomorrow.
I know. I love it. There's another great quote that I just saw in this book called Yes and how improvisation reverses no but thinking and improves creativity and collaboration. I was just reading it for another just again because my drama class. But success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill said that one. Remember that one?
That makes me think of another framing that, to quote an author I've already quoted, about Ryan Holiday. He bases a lot of his writing in Stoicism, which
Mhm.
is an often misinterpreted philosophy, but it like especially in like the grin and bear it idea, everyone thinks Stoic means like hardened and
Right.
like nothing, but it's just very logic based and and one thing that he talks about is, instead of framing things as I have to do this, framing it as I get to do this, right?
Oh, I
And
love
and
that.
that's something that's been really interesting to me. Like if I'm taking on a big work project, and there's all these things that really annoy me, and it's like, oh, I have to do all these things. Finding a way to reframe it and say, but I get to have this kind of responsibility and trust, and I
Mm-hmm.
get to set direction, and I get to choose who I work with, to like reframe it there.
Love that.
Um, that's just
Thank
like
you.
an exercise that I find really valuable, and hard to do, but it's just really valuable in those moments where you're like stuck,
Yeah.
just reframing it and thinking like, this is something that I have an opportunity to do,
Mm-hmm.
and not something that I'm like being forced to do. There's probably better analogies and examples out there, but that's
Mm-hmm.
just how I think about it.
I love that because I do want to close, but I want to stop with this point that kind of encompasses everything about why we don't avoid tough things. And that is because you become a stronger sense of who you truly are. Can you speak more about the stronger sense of self?
Yeah, I think you really start to learn what you're made of through challenges. You
Mm-hmm.
you see what you're capable of, and also what you're not, which I find just as instructional. In fact, I find it more instructional.
Yes.
Um, and so I think that they're like, my sense of self is still um, ongoing, just like all
Mm-hmm.
that we've talked about, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there are these any moments. I'm still figuring out who Code is, what I care about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on version 72.4 of me or whatever, right?
Right.
And but like throughout, like having dialogue with yourself, I think like that comes via conflict. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a creative. I'm a person who has always been artistic and that kind of stuff. And I truly believe that the best creativity comes from constraints.
Yes.
Like when it's easy enough to just write and write and write a bunch of words, but then to summarize those words into a poem or to like a one sentence, that's very
Mhm.
difficult.
That's
But like
good.
that, to being able to summarize all this stuff into like one sentence is immensely creative and challenging. You come up with like some brilliant things when you give yourself those constraints. So I think like, if I have any parting words, not to jump that far ahead, but I just
Yeah.
think like, as challenges come to you in your life, like, these are opportunities to learn, these are opportunities to grow. They're gonna be hard. That's like, they're not gonna be fun. You don't have to like them, and you won't like them. But if you allow it to be instructional and you try
Mm-hmm.
and figure out, what
Mm-hmm.
is this teaching me and how am I gonna grow, like, that's the best thing. So I feel like crap. I feel like crap right now. I'm enjoying this conversation, but I just don't feel good. But I
Yeah.
know that what I'm learning from this, whatever, however long I'm going to be feeling this way, like, I know that in the future I'm going to learn something from this, or I'll be able to look back at this and say, that gave me an opportunity to, figure out diet or routines, or, whatever it is. I don't know what the lesson is yet, but I know I'm going to look back and say, like, that really challenging year and a half, I was able to come out on the other end better because of it.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great final word. But let's end with your three recommendations. I know you have a book, a podcast, and something to follow, and then we'll close it out from there.
That's right. And I think I've already shared these links with you for your audience, but if not, I'll make sure I do. So the author that I've name dropped a few times, his name is Ryan Holiday. He's written a number of books, but the one I'm going to recommend here is called Stillness is the Key. It's a really quick and easy read. The chapters are sometimes 2 pages long,
Mm,
and it pulls from philosophy across different genres, religious and otherwise. And it really is just, it asks the question, what is stillness and how can we achieve it in a world that is noisier and noisier every day? And I just find it to have very grounding principles. I've read it
mm,
probably 4 times already, and
mm.
it just is like, to me, it's kind of meditative. So I recommend that. Stillness is the key, and I think it's a topic that is important to me and to all of us these days,
It should
right?
be required. I love
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Yeah. Another podcast that I find incredibly inspiring is one called Rebuilding the Beast. And we'll share a link to this. But this podcast is full of stories of people who have faced trials and tribulations, some in the past, some ongoing. There's stories about like surviving an attack, surviving, really bad accidents, disabilities, all of these different things. And so there's just, I just listen to it every time a new episode comes out because there's so many inspiring stories of people and how they think about the topic that we talked about today, like
Mm-hmm.
getting through. And it's one of those ones that makes you say, if they can do that, I can do this. And that's just
Exactly.
such an inspiring message, I think, all the time. Um,
Exactly.
and then the last one is a little brainy. There's a blog called Brain Pickings, which I'll link to. And when I talk about, not starting the day with news and not starting the day with like things that are built to make you angry or to make you, like get riled up. I think Brain Pickings is the opposite of that. It's a blog that pulls from history and philosophy and writing and creativity and art, and it's centered around various different themes, and they're kind of long form things to meditate on. And I just really find myself like sitting there and reading, and it really just inspires me in like back to the first topic, stillness and kind of calm way. So I know there's a lot to read out there these days, but if you're looking for something that won't make you, throw your phone against the wall, this has kind of been like a good place for me to start my days.
Wow, Coate, this is amazing. This conversation. Now, if we let me know where we can find you if you want to be found.
Yeah, so I do go by Coate these days, but on the internet's Andrew J. Coate. So all one word. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram. I think I'm Googleable these days, so you can find the articles and things I've written. But
Yes.
yeah, connect with me. Let's talk about tough things and inspiration and all of that.
It truly, you have been like someone to talk to, like in the storm of life. I feel a stillness talking to you. It's like you just brought the title, ain't gonna avoid tough things. And yet your message has been to be still. So I really appreciate you. I know we both are exhausted today, and it's been such a blessing to talk to you. I just wish you all the best, and hopefully,
Oh,
so
yeah.
thank
Wait, do we
you.
want to
Yes.
do the tattoo
Yes,
thing?
yes. So
What do we do?
show us your tattoo. I saw it in your Medium article. Please
Oh
show
yeah.
us. I love
Oh yeah,
this
buddy.
phrase.
Yeah.
Paradise makes no demands. And I see a
Yeah.
mountain.
Yeah, it's well, like I don't know. That just is to make the tattoo look cool and not have words. But paradise makes no demands. It comes from a book called The Geography of Genius, or I guess they're gonna have to rename it The Geography of Me after your comment earlier. Um,
See, even the fact you like a book called The Geography of Genius shows me your genius.
it's about creative genius. Anyway, so I think this puts a cap. I think this puts a cap on that pretty nicely. So the phrase "paradise makes no demands." It talks about like paradise being this place. Like if you think about like laying on a beach with like a mojito or whatever, like nothing is demanded of you. And if you go through your life that way, where like it's just easy and nothing's demanded of you, it's kind of like a muscle. Like when you don't use it, it atrophies. So without conflict and without something to respond to, we just kind of become nothing. And what are we about? And so paradise makes no demands. Like this is saying demands are good. So like,
I
screw
love that.
paradise or whatever. So not in the yeah, but
No,
that was a meaningful phrase to me, and so I got it tattooed on my arm, and I think about it. It tells me do tough things.
I love it. Thank you, Coate. It's been a
Sure.
blessing. I appreciate you so much for joining me on Ain't Gonna Be No Stupid. Bye.
Bye.